Hey guys, I'm Kiki. I'm 17 years old and this is my journey with mental health. So I just want to start with saying that my mental health struggle comes not from my childhood but from a traumatic incident or a group of traumatic incidences that happened in a short amount of time just last year in 2020. This particular year was obviously super difficult for a lot of people, but there were some that it kind of took a really heavy toll on. And I'm not trying to degrade anybody else's trauma because you're always entitled to your own trauma, but this is my story and what happened last year that formed me. So I will start not with my own story, but with the story of my childhood best friend. I was a freshman in high school in 2018 when she first got diagnosed with cancer in May of our freshman year. And immediately we started praying together. We found God. We found a different relationship with God together. And so we had already been close before. She'd been the only person that stuck through middle school, high school with me when I transferred and when all of my other friends completely just kind of left my side because I was transferring schools and I wasn't going to a public school. I was going to a Catholic school. I was the only one from my town who went. And so all of my other friends, I'm not blaming them, but all of my other friends, we just kind of stopped communicating because I wasn't going to be at the same school as them the next year. So freshman year, she is the one person that I know I can rely on with everything that I have. And she gets smacked in the face with this awful disease. We were 14. Yes, 14 years old. And now we were dealing with something that no 14-year-old should have to deal with. And we were praying with each other, and our relationship just kind of deepened at to that specific point where I would text her every day and I'd just be like, hey, I'm thinking of you. And it would be one of those things where she wouldn't have to respond because I know she saw it and she knows that I'm thinking of her, but she's going through something major right now and she doesn't have the time or the energy to respond. Fast forward about a year and a half, in August before our junior year, we got news that she was cancer-free. And her scans were clear and she was in the clear and she was happy because she was going back to school. She was finally how she felt was normal. But she knew she obviously was still living in that kind of fear, what if I get re-diagnosed, all of that stuff. So I stuck by her through all of that, and we obviously stayed in contact through that year and a half because we prayed together and we would send Bible quotes back and forth, and we would just we were each other's backbones when we didn't have one. And she was the person that I went to for everything. And then she was cleared in August, and then we went back to school in September, and I had recently gone through a kind of severe breakup because it was my first real relationship, and some of my friends that I had thought I could trust did some questionable things, and I got a little upset. And she was the person that was like, no, it's okay, I'm here for you through all of this. I know we're both friends with them, but I'm here for you, and it's okay to be upset, but you have to forgive them. You can't hold a grudge forever. So she told me that, and I did, and I apologized for how I reacted. She helped me get through that part, definitely, because I thought I couldn't trust anybody after that point. And I was absolutely horrified about what had happened. But she was so loyal to me and always made sure that she was the person who had my back when nobody else did. And she ended up going to my homecoming that year. In our friend group, one of our friends brought her, and we all like went as this one big group, and that was kind of like our last hurrah as like a big friend group. We would always hang out before me and my ex-boyfriend broke up. We would all hang out as one big group, and after we broke up, it like wasn't ever really the same because obviously we'd broken up. But then homecoming was the night that like we all kind of had that last one night together, and we all took pictures together, and we all had such a good time, such a blast. And then in November, she got re-diagnosed. She had relapsed with cancer. This time it came back more aggressive, and it was a little bit scarier. She became kind of sick very quickly. You could see it was starting to take a toll on her, and then we were in February of our junior year, right before COVID hit, and my mom called me downstairs one day and was like, "Cameron, I need to talk to you." And I was like, "Why?" And she said, "Well, Kyla's not doing great. She's really sick, and they don't know how much longer it's gonna be." And I was like, "Okay, I'm just gonna be there for her." I planned a day with that friend group again, and I said, "Listen, we need to get together one more time. We don't know how much longer we have, so let's plan for this day." And we never got to that day. Kyla passed away 3 days before we were supposed to all meet up again. She passed March 18th, 2020. It was about 5 days after the world shut down because of COVID, and that was just the beginning of what was going to go down that year. And then that was probably like the worst thing that happened, but it was only the beginning of what I was going to go through. So the day that I found out Kyla passed away, it was about I think it was like an hour and a half, 2 hours after she passed. I was in the car with my sister and my mom and my niece, and we were on the way to go on a hike, and my mom got a phone call, and she answered it, and then she stepped out of the car, and I was like, "This isn't good." She stepped out of the car. She never does this. And then she circled around to the back seat, opened the door, and said, "Cameron, I need you to come out." And I was like, well, fuck. That's exactly what went through my head. I stepped out, and she looked at me and she said, "Kyla passed away today." And I just absolutely, I can't even describe it. Like, it just felt like there was a release because she wasn't in pain anymore, but it was also this sudden, just like heavy, and oh my god, it was a terrifying feeling. I never ever want to feel like that again. Feeling the release of your best friend not being in pain anymore, like your absolute best friend, just not suffering anymore, but knowing that she's not there for when you need her anymore, it's really indescribable. I don't remember much else from that day. I just remember we went back home. I didn't finish eating my sandwich. I was supposed to eat that. I had a sandwich that I was supposed to eat, and I didn't. And I got yelled at for not eating it because I was supposed to eat my sandwich. But I was laying on the couch, and my boyfriend at the time had come over, and then we went to the beach because that was Kyla's place, was the beach. She loved the beach. Everything about the ocean, the water, the sand, everything. Everything about the beach she loved, so we went. And as we were walking there, Scarlett, my niece, my sister was carrying her, and Scarlett looked at the water and starts waving. And I was like, who is she waving at? There's nobody out there. Then it clicked. I was like, Kyla's out there. That she's waving to Kyla. And I just remember it was one of the hardest days of my entire 17 years of life. And I walked onto that beach feeling like I was being embraced by God himself. Like, I just got the biggest hug. And I know it was from Kai. I know that now. But that day I was like, who is touching me? And why do I feel this way? I should be sad as heck right now. But I just feel numb. I did feel very numb for a long, long time. My parents used to joke with me and say that my feelings button was jammed. It very much was jammed. It still is sometimes. But I didn't feel anything for probably a solid 6 months. Shortly after Kyla passed away, we started doing like regular classes and stuff. My teachers were pretty good about like giving me leeway in my assignments and like not having to attend every single class because of the anniversary or just something that triggered it or anything like that. They were really good about it. And Kyla's mom had set up a Christmas tree in her yard that we could visit and like put things on. It had lights because Kyla loved Christmas and loved things with lights and pretty and everything about Christmas she loved. And so she set up the Christmas tree, and I wrote a letter to Kai the day after she passed. And I put it under the tree, and I put it in an envelope, a paper envelope, because I specifically remember thinking, if Kyla sees me put a plastic bag under this tree, she's gonna come and haunt me for the rest of my life, because I'm littering. And so I put paper because paper would disintegrate eventually. So I put it in a paper envelope and I put it under the tree, and it rained. And when it rained, the paper melted away and it went into the ground, and I'm guessing the letter found its way to Kai. I don't think I'll ever disclose what I said in that letter because it was really raw, and I know she was standing over my shoulder while I was writing it. I didn't need to put it under the tree, but I felt like I had to put something there because I've known her since I was 5 years old, and if I didn't, then I felt like I was doing her kind of an injustice by not representing our friendship there. But then a month passed, and we got an email from my high school. I go to a private Catholic high school, and we got an email, and it was just a YouTube video link. And we were like, what the heck? What is this? Usually it's like the weekly newsletter with all of the upcoming events and things that they're trying to plan, even though COVID was taking over and we couldn't do anything as a school community. Mind you, there was only about 150 of us as an entire high school. We were really small, and so all of us were really tight-knit, and not being in the building with each other was really difficult because we always loved seeing everybody else and having the energy of everybody else around us. So being alone was always so difficult. But we got an email, we watched the YouTube video, and next thing I know, it's the, what's his name? I always forget it. Not priest. What's the, bishop. It's Bishop Acuna, and he's announcing that my school doesn't have enough funds to stay open for my senior year, and they're closing at the end of the academic year. And I just remember looking at my dad, who was watching the video with me, and going, I can't go back to public school. I can't, not without Kyla. Kyla's dead. That's exactly what I said. I can't go back to public school without Kyla. She's dead. Because she was the person who kind of kept me from all of the people that left. And that only added to what went on that year. And so first I lost my childhood best friend, and then I lost my second home. Mind you, my parents went to that high school and they met there. They're high school sweethearts. Like my life started at Coyle. And then it was just over and we couldn't even do anything about it. We were $2 million in debt with the diocese. There was no church to get donations for the school. There was no fundraising happening because we were closed because of COVID. There was no masses that people could donate, like when they passed the money down into the little buckets at the end. There was none of that. There was no funding for Catholic schools. There's been Catholic school closings throughout the country because of COVID. But I think I felt that loss so heavily because Kyla had shadowed me at that school. And the last day, March 13th, that we walked through those hallways, she was still alive. And I didn't know it was my last time in that school. And then the next time we got to go in was when we got our books, and she had just died, and I felt like she was walking through that hallway with me, getting my things and gathering my things, but I didn't realize that she knew what was going on, and that it was so much closure for me, and that's why she was following me through those hallways. And she was sticking by me because she knew it was the last time I'd be there, and she knew that we had a connection at that school that nobody ever recognized. Even though she just shadowed me for a day, she considered coming to that school because of all the friends that we had that were mutual friends, and that our friend group was there, but she didn't go. She chose to stay at our public high school, our town's public high school, for our junior year. And obviously that was in her best interest, because then 2 school communities would have been affected by her death. But the last time I walked through those halls was sometime in April, and she was there. She was there. I could feel her. I went to my locker. I was the only one in the hallways. There was nobody else because we couldn't. And her energy was so heavy. It was so heavy. It was crazy. Wild. And then the school year ended, and I was doing okay. I was still really numb. I didn't really go outside much because I was very sad. I didn't really have a lot of energy, and I had relied on a lot of people for a lot of different things. And then one of those people had to leave. He had to go. He had to go to basic training. He left. And he was gone for the summer. And it was just like, reality slap. Hold on. And I was in such a dark place from the minute he left. And I kind of realized, like, oh, I'm relying on a lot of people to help me get through this. Like, I have a whole army. I have a whole support system. And so then I started to fall down this hole. And I became, like, severely depressed. I didn't get out of bed some days. My parents would have to literally, like, come upstairs and be like, I'm not leaving your room until you get out of bed. I would cry myself to sleep. I would have the worst intrusive thoughts, and I would go to get the mail some days, and I would be like, what happened if I would just, like, lay in the street? Like, what would happen then? Would anybody notice? Nobody's here. Would anybody notice? And I had the worst time with trying to get through the summer. And the summer is supposed to be the best time of the year. You're supposed to be out of school, no stress. But for me, it was the worst. It was Kyla's birthday. And it was... Your phone did, like, the 10% thing.
Oh, okay.
And it was her favorite time of year. She would spend all year down the Cape. And this was the first year where I wasn't seeing her sitting in the sun. And I wasn't seeing her text me and be like, oh, I'm so burnt. I'm so sunburnt. And it was so hard to just sit there, and it literally looked like my world was black and white without her, without her energy, her sunshine, her smile, anything. She literally, it sounds so weird, but my best friend, she literally lit up my entire world. She put the happiness into some days. All days. She put my happiness into all days. And I really started to spiral in like July. It was right before my birthday, and I was like, oh, this is gonna suck. Like, it's my first birthday without her. My mom is trying to plan these things, and she's doing a great job, but I'm really just not feeling it this year. Like, I just want to go back in time. I just want to go back in time. And I just want Kyla to be here, but nothing can fix what is going on right now. And I wasn't looking forward to the start of school because I had to transfer for my senior year. So I was going to an entirely new school with people that I had no idea who they were. And luckily, most of the senior class from my school had transferred as one unit. But I was still so upset because I had such an emotional connection to that school. And Kyla wasn't even there for me to talk to about it. She would be the person that I would go to when I was feeling like this, and it was so difficult for me to grasp the idea of not having her there, because some days I would look in the mirror and I would just be like, she's not dead. She's just sleeping. Like, I would literally just say, she's just sleeping. She's just taking a nap, or she's just in treatment right now. She just can't answer her phone. I would text her and I would expect an answer. And then I would get frustrated because she wouldn't answer, but she was dead. She is dead. And on my birthday, that was like, I tried to put a smile on for my family because that was a really difficult day for me. It was the first birthday without her. I was 17. 17 was like her thing because she was the dancing queen. She loved Mamma Mia, everything about it. 17 was like her thing. So turning 17 without her was kind of a difficult thing. And I did try and like get through it, but then the night came, and the night is always the worst time. I had a really, really difficult day, but I put a smile on for my parents and for my family. We had a day with like my extended family. We went up to New Hampshire to see my aunts and uncles and cousins. And then we came home to my sister's house for cake, and I had a little photo shoot with Scarlett, and I said that I was dedicating my 17th year to Kyla. So here I am, dedicating my 17th year to Kyla. In her honor, I want to start to be more open than I already am about my mental health and the struggle that I had with finding help and admitting that I had a problem, admitting that I had a mental illness, because that's the first step, is you have to admit to yourself, you have to look in the mirror and say, I'm sick. It's an illness. I'm sick. I don't feel good in my head. And that was really difficult for me because I didn't want to be judged for being sad. Because she's your best friend. Like, oh, you'll get over it in 6 months. But 6 months had passed and nothing. I wasn't over it. And then a year had passed and nothing. I still wasn't over it. It kind of taught me, like, trauma isn't measured by time. And healing from trauma isn't measured by time. So, rewind back to, like, mid-August, and I went to my mom and I said, I think I really need some help. I was already in counseling because my mom was like, oh, yeah, we kind of need to, like, get you something because we know how badly you're struggling right now. And then I went to her and I went to both my parents and I said, the counseling isn't helping. I need more. They fought me a little bit because nobody wants to admit that your child is so sad that they need literal happy pills to help them put a smile on their face. But eventually they kind of saw, like, okay, this is real, like, she needs help. And they let me talk to my doctor, and I had a little episode with my doctor, and they realized how poor my mental health was. And they said, okay, we'll get you connected to a behavior specialist. And a week later, I was starting antidepressants, a very small amount. So it wasn't really that helpful, but it was a starting point. I definitely felt a difference. But over a course of 6 weeks, we upped my medications, and I began to feel like a human being again. I began to feel feelings, not numb anymore. By then, I had started at my new school, and I didn't feel like a complete zombie when I got out of bed in the morning. I felt like I could function and interact with other people without literally needing to take a 4-hour nap after 1 hour of talking to somebody. And then when I started school, it was kind of difficult because I was seeing everybody that Kyla knew, but we weren't talking with each other. Like, everybody that Kyla was friends with, that we all used to be friends, but we weren't close anymore because she died. And it was just kind of like, oh, this is kind of like a punch in the chest. This kind of sucks. I don't like seeing them and not being able to, like, hey, you okay? That kind of thing. It was very weird seeing people that Kyla knew and not being confident enough in myself to reach out. So then I kind of realized, like, well, I'm not the only one struggling. Like, there's people that Kyla knew as well that are obviously going to struggle. We're all struggling because we all lost a best friend. And so that's when I started, like, posting on just my Instagram or my Snapchat and just saying, like, oh, remember to smile today. We had a quote called "Be Kind," but spelled with a Y, K-Y-N-D, in honor of Kyla. And so I would say, like, spread kindness, make somebody smile today, kind of as, like, a starting point for my platform on mental health. And then I went through a, like, really serious breakup. This boy I'd been dating for 1.5 years, and it was long distance because he was in the military, and he was absolutely, like, my person. He was my boy version of Kyla, and so I relied on him really heavily after she passed. And I see that now more a year later, and we've talked about it. We're on good terms, but I kind of realized, like, wow, I really did need help, and I didn't have it because he was at basic training, and I was all alone, and all I had was my family, and they didn't know how to handle me sometimes, because how do you handle a 17-year-old girl with depression and anxiety? I would have a lot of panic attacks, random ones. Like, I would sit in my truck before practice, before cheer practice, and I would just be scrolling through TikTok, and all of a sudden I couldn't breathe, and I couldn't feel my toes or my fingers. So it would just be, like, stupid little things like that. They all added up, and eventually we just kind of realized, like, well, he realized first, it wasn't quite what it used to be, so we broke up, and I was sad. But then I was sad for about 3 days, and I was like, I'm gonna use this as fuel. And then I started manifesting. Manifesting works. I was like, listen, life has been throwing bricks, like, and I just keep striking out. Like, I can't win. So I said, I'm gonna grab life by the balls, and I'm gonna make it my bitch. And that's what I did. So I started being a heavier advocate for mental health, and I opened up about my mental health and about the struggle that I just told you all about, and how the summer was my absolute worst state. But it made people realize, like, holy crap, I'm not the only one who's struggling. I'm not the only one who's gone through things that have had an impact on me. And it just kind of, it opened the door for new friendships for me. It was great. But my favorite part was that people would text me and be like, that was really courageous. Like, I feel a lot better knowing that I'm not alone. And so this is why my sister and I decided to start this, because everybody has trauma. Everybody has some sort of thing that has influenced them in a negative way, that has caused something in a negative way in their life. And we want you guys to recognize that you're not alone in this fight. And mental health affects everybody, whether you think it does or not. Somebody always knows somebody else with a mental health illness, a mental illness or a disorder or something, and you just might not know it. A lot of people struggle in silence, and this is to kind of try and break the stigma and recognize that having a mental illness or having poor mental health is not something that's bad. It's something that needs to be treated the same as the flu. So, that's my story.